Special meeting held January 6, 2021. Adequate notice of this special meeting of the Kenilworth Board of Education has been provided to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, and the local source on January 8, 2021. A copy has been filed with the Kenilworth Borough Clerk, posted in the board office, the Kenilworth Borough Hall, the Brearley and Harding Schools as is provided by the Open Public Meetings Act. COVID-19 compliance was updated on December 14, 2020. This will be an in-person meeting. The meeting location is in the David Brearley cafeteria due to COVID-19 modifications to the indoor capacities issued by the state of New Jersey. In-person participation is limited due to social distance requirements and the size of the meeting room. The Board of Education, therefore, has calculated that 30 members of the public will be able to participate in person. In accordance with Board of Education Policy Bylaw 0164.6, remote public meetings, board meeting during a declared emergency, and in an effort to encourage and increase public participation, the meeting will be live streamed, and the public will be able to view via YouTube live stream. The link will be available at 7:30 p.m. by clicking on the Board of Education tab on the district webpage, homepage, then the Kenilworth Board of Ed YouTube channel page, where you'll be able to see the live stream icon. If members of the public are unable to attend the meeting in person and do not have internet access to watch the live stream, they will have an opportunity to call in to listen to the meeting. Members of the public requesting this accommodation must request to do so by 3 p.m. prior to the meeting to obtain the call-in information and password codes. Public comment will be accepted as follows. Number one, electronically via email to publiccomments@kenilworthschools.com. These messages must be received by 4 p.m. on the night of the meeting. All emails received by the deadline will be read during the public comment section of the meeting. Number two, in person at the meeting venue during the public comment section of the meeting. And number three, by calling into the meeting venue at 908-931-9696, extension 2325, during the public comment section of the meeting. In accordance with Board of Education Bylaw 0155.1, board member participation at a board meeting using electronic devices, Board of Education members will have an opportunity, if needed, to participate via the Zoom meeting platform.
Thank you, Mr. Ganello. Please rise and join us for the salute to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Ganello, can we please have roll call?
Biner.
Here.
Braun.
Here.
David.
Here.
Drogan.
Here.
Habather. Jankowicz. Ladati.
Here.
Panici.
Here.
Zimmerman.
Here.
All present.
Mr. Ganello, do you want me to read the purpose, or do you?
Sorry?
Want me to read the purpose?
Yes, you can do the purpose.
The Board of Education will be reviewing the technical requirements of the 2021-2022 budget and adopting a tentative budget for submission to the Executive County Superintendent of Schools for review. Mr. Ganello will make a presentation on the 2021-2022 budget. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Yeah, the presentation will be by Mr. Ganello.
And we're going to start off with Mr. Arlington.
Good evening, everybody. I'm excited to present and have you dig into the tentative budget for the 21-22 school year. I'd like to just kind of paint a big picture for a few minutes, and Vince is going to then dig into the details. All right, so all of our work and the work you'll see reflected here tonight falls into one of these 5 buckets of budget goals. As I shared with you last week, a big part of the budget conversation so far have been trying to differentiate needs from wants, but that work isn't always black or white, right? There's lots of gray. So a lot of the budget process thus far has been prioritizing with our district goals in mind. That's the second bucket there. I mentioned this last Monday, which is making sure that our goals drive our budget, and it's not the other way around. One thing you'll hear tonight that I'm really proud of relates to number 3. There have been no cuts to curriculum, athletic, or co-curricular opportunities. If there are shifts, it's because of programmatic beliefs or beliefs in vision and direction, not because of financial constraints. And in actuality, as you'll hear and as you've been learning throughout the process, we've actually really expanded opportunities for kids in a bunch of different ways. 4, one of our big priorities was to make sure our return to school post-pandemic is reflected in the budget needs that we have. I read something today that's startling and hopefully not true. And NWEA, which is a nonprofit ed organization that aligns assessments with proficiency, they're forecasting out that on average, kids will return to school with a significant learning loss so far as they may have decreased 50% in reading achievement and 30% in math. That's startling, and that's reflective of all different types of learning that's happening this year. We're trying our hardest, obviously, to mitigate that, but we do know one thing for sure, right? Kids are gonna come back with a lot of different intervention needs, and so this budget prioritizes that. And then, of course, as Vince will talk about tonight, we look to minimize tax impact by maximizing the use of tax dollars. This is what you heard the leadership team members present the other night, and this is what's really exciting to me as the Chief Academic Officer of the district. So these are just some highlights. There are a lot of others in the granular level details of the budget. But what you'll see in the areas of curriculum and instruction, innovation, and student personnel services are opportunities for kids across the achievement continuum. So I haven't heard this too much in Kenilworth, but I know sometimes there are community members who feel as if school districts really zoom in on or prioritize high achieving students, right? Or special ed students or students who have special education needs. These advancements in these 3 categories are for all kids, again, across the academic continuum. So some of the highlights include curriculum and instruction advancements by way of resource updates, continuation of Harding's literacy work, and a real significant investment in high-quality PD. The C&I team presented that to you last Monday. In the category of innovation, lots of digital upgrades. There's some really great recommendations and work coming out of our Innovation Future Ready planning committees. And this budget prioritizes the work of those committees. And then in student personnel services, you see upgrades to interventions, again, hopefully to mitigate the learning loss that's being predicted. But without further ado, Vince is going to show how the technical aspects of the budget support this forecasted advancement.
Thank you, Superintendent Arlington. I think, Mr. Arlington really gave a great overview of how the budget process is built, especially focusing on the academic side and the need, especially this year, to focus on that learning loss. I mean, we were talking about that in January, and it seems to be maybe that it's according to those statistics that you were just talking about, it seems to be reality, which is, discouraging, but I think we have some mechanisms built within this budget that hopefully will address that. And also, hopefully, the fact that our students have been in school since September, unlike probably a lot of those students in those studies, that their learning loss might not have been as severe. So that's something that I think there might be a silver lining in as well. Despite, it's amazing to think that a year ago today was the first day that we were transitioning into all remote learning after we closed school for the pandemic. So this Monday, tomorrow would have been the first day of remote learning. So a lot has transpired over the past year. And I think we've managed our finances quite well through this, utilizing the opportunities that have come through, whether it be managing our own local funds, or whether it be through the federal funds, or even the county grants that have come through COVID. But I would also like to thank the efforts of the Finance and Facility Committee and the Personnel Committee, who really helped put this budget together in a realistic format that enables us to present it to you this evening. Their work and their dedication was very impressive this year. Even with COVID, we came out and we did our work and got it done. So I do appreciate the committee's efforts on that. So I'd like to review the budget. If you recall, tonight is basically our third presentation. This is going to be the technical aspects of the budget. The goal of this evening is to adopt a tentative budget for submission to the Executive County Superintendent. The County Superintendent looks at that budget from certain technical aspects that have to be met. So the purpose of my presentation tonight is simply to review those technical aspects. So you have the revenue side of the budget, which you can see here. I know it's tiny, but we have a $31,078,000 budget, and which is an increase of $195,000 above our adjusted budget. You can see there's not significant changes in too many of our revenues, other than I'd like to point out state aid. We did see an increase in state aid this year, again. Well, actually, last year was a pause. And it was mostly an equalization aid, which was part of the process of the formula being continued that came into play about 5 years ago. So we will continue, hopefully, to get, I think there's one more year left on that, so hopefully we will get another additional infusion of state aid next year, which will hopefully put us where we should have been over the past about 10 years. If you recall, the budget is developed into 3 phases. Last week, we heard from the leadership team budget, and they highlighted their budgets. We spent a lot of time on the leadership budgets. As I said, it's actually a very small part of the budget. It's about less than 4% of the budget, but we do spend a lot of time on it because it's actually one of the areas where we do have a lot of ability to not only impact instruction, but also to make modifications and reduce it or increase it in certain areas. The salary and instruction is phase 2. And then the school business administrator documentation section is in phase 3. The expenditure side of the budget is also equal to the revenue side of the budget. So those 2 numbers there, that $31,078,000 has to be identical. Some of the significant expenditure changes that you will see have to do with tuition. That is mostly out-of-district tuition. Several students aged out, meaning that they're no longer eligible to be provided by us. They reached their 21-year-old limit, so therefore we do not have to provide services to them anymore, as well as a couple students we're bringing back to district. And that's why you'll see a corresponding increase in special education, which incorporates some of those modifications that we're doing in district. District adequacy, this is one of the things that the Executive County Superintendent will look at. Adequacy is a model, basically part of the funding formula that the state puts together, and it's designed to provide a reference point for the proposed tax levy for the budget year as it relates to the base amount required to provide the core curriculum content standards. So that's the base adequacy budget. Essentially, it's a model that's been developed by the Department of Education that allows for comparisons between where our budget stands with respect to the model and the ideal school program. That's where it kind of skews from reality, is what is the ideal school program. There's so many variables that go into that skew this, whether it's teacher salaries or extra programs or unique opportunities that we might provide our students that weren't built into that adequacy budget that could theoretically increase our amount above the adequacy. So staffing, building configurations, choice of all aid, all have impacts on that. So we're currently in excess adequacy by $1,711,000. What does that mean? Not much. Doesn't mean we have to reduce our budget by that much. Doesn't mean we get don't get a gold star. All it means is that we have to put a statement in our advertised budget that says that that basically says the school district has programs and services in addition to the New Jersey student learning standards adopted by the State Board of Education. And as you can see there, I have indicated some of the things that why we feel that we are above adequacy. We have an all-day kindergarten program. An all-day kindergarten program is not mandated. It's not part of that base model. We have extracurricular programs. We have a very expanded wellness program now built within our budget that I guarantee you 15 years ago when they were doing these models, they did not probably have a clue what SEL was all about. So all those type of things, our SEL, our school resource officer, our SLEO, all are not within that adequacy budget, but are in our budget. So those are some of the reasons. So that's district adequacy. Any questions about adequacy? Okay. Minimum tax levy. Each district is required to have a required local share. And basically, it's a formula that's also developed as part of that program. So it's part of the district adequacy budget. And the pre-budget year general fund tax levy and adjusted amounts that come up on how they come up with that district adequacy budget. And you can see there that the minimum tax levy there is $18,537,000. Our current projected tax levy is about $20,500,000. Therefore, we have met that requirement that we do not have, we have gone beyond the minimum, which is required. The next item I'd like to talk about is the tax levy cap calculation. As you know, we have a restrictive budget cap of 2%. However, that figure is not based on the total budget, but just the tax levy. So even though we have a $30 million budget, in theory, we were only allowed to increase our tax levy by the 2% of the tax levy, not the entire budget. So it's our tax levy is about $20 million, so we can increase that by 2%. The state does allow for certain adjustments. And every year other than this, they've allowed for health care adjustments, not this particular year because of Chapter 78 and Chapter 44. So that one has suspended. And they allow for increases in enrollment and some other ones that really don't typically apply to us, like sharing staff and adjustments for responsibility of other people in other districts. So the ones that we typically are eligible for are the health care costs and the enrollment costs. In this particular budget, there were no expansions of that, so therefore it was basically a strict 2% increase. And then on this particular calculation here, you can see on letter H, we used bank cap. And I'll get into bank cap a little bit on the next slide. So you took our adjusted cap, our last year tax levy, increased it by 2%, add the use of bank cap, and that's where we came up with our tax levy. So bank cap. The Finance Committee on last Wednesday had a great discussion about bank cap, and I do appreciate that discussion. Had a great understanding of the impact of the bank cap, how it's generated, what happens when it expires, and we had pretty much a philosophical discussion on that, which was very good. You can see that you're allowed to generate the bank cap, and then you're also allowed to accumulate it for several years, and you could use it in those years coming forward. Now, bank cap isn't real money. It's just your authority to raise your tax levy. So that is a big distinction there. So when it says that bank cap available on that first line is $408,000, it's not like that's money sitting in a surplus account. That just means that we could take our $20 million tax levy and increase it to $20,400,000, okay? We're raising the taxes an additional $400,000. We're allowed to do that, okay? In this particular year, of the money that was generated in 18-19, that $408,000, we're only using $97,000. $311,000 is expiring this year. And that will not be able to be used in the future because this is the fourth year. And that was basically the discussion that the committee had last Wednesday was, do we want to allow that to expire? Because once it expires, you don't have that opportunity. You lose that ability to you lose that authority to raise taxes in the future. And you might be put in a situation 2 years down the road where you might need that money. Maybe the state aid doesn't increase and there are certain costs that exceed and you wouldn't be able to do things and you might have to reduce programs. But we stuck with the $97,000 and we still do next year have $495,000 available to us to use if need be. So any questions about bank cap? Okay. Next is recapitulation of balances. There's several categories of balances that make up the recapitulation of balances. Each category has very specific requirements of how the money can be used and how it can be accumulated and their maximum levels. The first is the unassigned free balance, which is basically surplus. That's your traditional surplus. You could use it for whatever purposes you want. You could use it to reduce the tax levy, meaning you could use it for instructional programs, you could use it for facility programs, you could use it for basically whatever you deem fit. It's unassigned, unrestricted, and you have that ability to do that. So in this particular year, we're appropriating the money to reduce it from $719,000 to $362,000. And basically, that allows us to reduce the tax levy. That's what we're basically using it for. And you can see the prior year, we reduced it by $458,000. So we're right around that area. We do anticipate the ability to regenerate that money this year, if need be. And in fact, the governor today just signed the bill that allows us to increase our our free balance from 2% to 4%. So they acknowledge that 2% free balance was kind of low, especially in the world of pandemics, that it would be nice for districts to be able to bank a little bit more money and keep it for those rainy days. So we're going to have that ability. The second area is capital reserve. Capital reserve is simply our ability to put money away for our rainy day fund for capital projects, whether they be windows, roofs, doors, expansions, whatever it might be. So this year we're reducing that. We're withdrawing $300,000 from the capital reserve to basically do the work on the 1923 section of Harding School, the facade work, which is lintel repairs and some other masonry repairs to the Harding School. And then the next reserve is our maintenance reserve, which we're also appropriating $109,000, which is basically to upgrade the HVAC system in the basement of Harding School, actually install an HVAC system in the Harding School to code, and deal with some water infiltration that we've been getting from the second ground playground down into the old central civil defense room. So it basically floods out every time it rains. So we're going to plan on those two projects will be bundled together. We're going out to bid in a couple weeks, and we expect to have the bids back for our April 28th public hearing, so we can award those on that evening and be up and running. That hopefully the project will be done by September 1st. It also includes, just in case you're curious, it includes power washing the entire section of the 1923 section to take care of all those stains on there, as well as properly seal it again once that's done. If you recall, that was actually how we got into this project, was we called the contractor out to do that work, and he noticed that the damage to the lintels, and he recommended we have our engineer explore it. So it was a good thing that we needed to do the cleaning, because sometimes it's, you know, you find things when you do cleaning. It's like going to the dentist. And then finally is emergency reserve, $250,000. They did expand the ability to use that for COVID relief this year, but with all the other opportunities that we had through, whether it be through FEMA, the county, or the state CARES or the federal CARES money, we didn't feel a need to dip into that. So that will stay at the $250,000. Whether they pull back the reins on that ability to use that in the future for those purposes, I'm not sure, but we utilize that more as a stop measure for a student or two students moving into the district that might have certain severe special needs, and that's basically our ability to use that money that we didn't want to get short, because as you know, some of these placements could cost, you know, $150,000 to $200,000 with transportation. So being unprepared in a budget year, that's important to be able to deal with. So to review the technical status of the budget, we had increases in state aid. We're using $97,029 of bank cap. We're requesting no cap adjustments for enrollment or health benefits. So therefore, we generated zero in bank cap for the future, and our district is above adequacy. Getting into tax impact, currently the current expense tax levy will be increasing $112.77. That's on an average home assessed at $183,400. That is a new figure, by the way. It used to be $180,000, so that has recently been increased. Debt service is $1.95 for a total tax increase of $114.72. You can take a look at the historical impact of the tax levy over the years, based on these years here from 2017 to the current 2022 budget. The average is 1.35%. And a lot of that had to do with not only our good fiscal responsibility here, but also some increases in state aid throughout those couple of first years there. I just want to touch upon URSA funding, because I know that's been getting a lot of press. So URSA funding, there was first the CARES 1, okay, which we used last year. We basically used that for SEL program, our CARES Plus program. Unfortunately, CARES Plus is the same name as the CARES program, but as our social emotional learning program that we implemented last year, that's what we basically use URSA 1 funding for. URSA 2 is the next round that we just are starting to get some guidance on. So not only is there the unrestricted portion of $619,000, but there's two other components to it: the Learning Acceleration Grant of almost $40,000, and then the Mental Health Supports and Services Grant for about $45,000. So this grant is, the application is due sometime in May. There's two components. There's first a data collection process, which looks like they're going to be looking at that student growth that Mr. Arlington was talking about earlier. You know, how are our students going, how are they doing? Whether they utilize that data to now pull back and say we don't need it, I don't know. I don't think they will, but at least it will be able to probably be used for that learning acceleration portion of the grant, which isn't a significant amount of money in our particular case. There are a lot of districts around the state who've gotten millions of dollars in that, and that's probably where that data collection probably is more critical for them to justify it. So some of the things right now that we're targeting, just based on what, based on what we think might be the guidelines, and these things were basically pulled out of the budget that allowed us to reduce the tax levy to where it is right now. The CARES Plus, we're going to continue that for 1 year. A psychiatrist on an hourly basis, some classroom aides, the NJC IEPD piece, some assemblies for wellness at the Harding and the Brewerly schools, classroom amplification system in some of the lower grades, teacher laptops for remote learning, some of the summer school components, and then Brewerly before and after school tutoring program that Mrs. Kukolo talked about during her budget presentation. So if you add up all those, we've currently right now targeted about $400,000 of that $700,000. And then we have to determine what we can do possibly with the other $310,000. One of the unique things about URSA 2 is it's actually a 2-year grant. You could use it over 2 years, so it expires in 2023. So you have the ability to, let's say, do another year of CARES Plus clinical support within that as well. But the Finance Committee was also looking at a possibility, if it's allowable, to do something with the relocatable classrooms or the modular classrooms out there. So that's a possibility too, that we would take care of the needs out there to expand that program that we've wanted to expand out there and allow us to get back in our conference room, hopefully, one of these times as well. So that's another possibility for that grant money. So what is coming up next? March 20th, the budget is due to the Executive County Superintendent, who will be reviewing it. Between March 20th and March 28th, we will continue to review the budget, focusing on efficiency and savings. To be honest with you, I think we're pretty comfortable with the budget that we presented. There's not that much out there right now that we think we can change or need to change. So this might be the final budget if there's nothing that dramatically happens between now and April. But we could always continue to look at it. April 6th, we have scheduled a budget meeting, question and answer with the finance chair, and then finally on April 28th at 7:30 is our public hearing. Any questions? No? Okay. I thank you for the opportunity this evening to discuss this with you all.
I make a motion to open the meeting to the public for comment.
Motion made by Mr. David, seconded by Mr. Haberthel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mallett?
Okay. Let me get my little sheet. Okay, public comment will now be accepted. The Board of Education sets the limit for the public to speak at the meeting to 5 minutes per person unless prior permission is being granted. We talked about earlier how meetings will be, comments will be accepted by phone call, 908-931-9696, extension 2325. to call in person, which there is no one here this evening. And then finally, electronically by public comments at kenilworthschools.com by the 4 p.m. deadline, which we did not receive any. So I guess we will just wait 1 minute for the lag time on the live stream and allow that a minute to go. Okay. Okay.
Make a motion to close to the public?
Motion. Thank you. Motion made by Mr. Ladati, seconded by Mrs. Braun. All those in favor saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Meeting is closed to the public for comment.
Okay. There's one resolution on this evening's agenda to vote on. Mr. Ladati?
Yeah, make a motion, we move forward to send the tentative budget to the county superintendent.
Thank you. Motion made by Mr. Ladati, seconded by Mr. Biner.
Okay. Biner?
Yes.
Braun?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Drogan?
Yes.
Tabitha?
Yes.
Jankowicz?
Yes.
Ladati?
Yes.
Zimmerman?
Yes.
Panici?
Yes.
Motion's carried unanimously.
Thank you. Do we need to go into closed executive session?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Then I will make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Second? Okay. Motion made by Mr. David, seconded by Mrs. Drogan. Motion is adjourned. Thank you. I'm sorry, meeting is adjourned.
If the, I think
The
Kyle would like to
negotiation committee could stay around for 5
negotiate.
minutes.